The music at my sister's wedding was loud enough to shake the crystal chandeliers, but I felt absolutely nothing except the crushing weight of the envelope in my father's hand. He didn't smile when he walked toward me. He didn't hesitate either. He simply held out a folded piece of paper as if it meant less than the expensive champagne glasses clinking all around us. "Sign it," he said, his voice dropping to a cold, razor-sharp whisper. I stared at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. "What is this?" "A disownment letter," he replied, loud enough for a few nearby guests to turn their heads in shock. "After today, you are no longer part of this family." Before I tell you the dark secret my father was trying to hide behind that letter, and how that very moment completely ruined my sister's wedding, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching this video from? Tell me in the comments below. For those who don't know me, my name is Olivia. I've spent years quietly protecting the people I love, only to discover that sometimes, the people you bleed for are the ones holding the knife. If you believe that toxic family members should finally face the consequences of their actions, hit that subscribe button and let's get into the story. For a split second, standing there in the crowded ballroom, I honestly thought I had misheard him. My sister Ava's designer wedding dress shimmered across the room. Guests were laughing, cameras were flashing, and the upbeat music played on as if nothing in the world could possibly be wrong. But right in front of me, my own father was casually erasing my entire existence. I didn't take the paper immediately. My hands felt completely numb, heavy as lead. "You chose now to do this?" I asked quietly, looking around the beautifully decorated venue. At her wedding, his jaw tightened, a familiar flash of anger crossing his face. "You brought shame to this family, Olivia. This is where it ends." I looked past his shoulder at Ava. She was standing near the stage, frozen, clutching her bridal bouquet. She wasn't stepping in to stop him. She wasn't even making eye contact with me. That cold indifference hurt far more than my father's harsh words, because no one in that room had any idea what I had actually done for this family over the years. No one knew about the endless late nights I spent working myself to the bone, paying off massive debts that I didn't create. No one knew about the financial disasters I had quietly cleaned up behind the scenes while my father pretended his construction empire was flawless. And most importantly, no one knew what I had discovered 6 months ago. I hadn't planned to expose it today. Not here, not like this. I wanted to give my sister her perfect day. But my father pushed the envelope closer, pressing it against my chest. "Sign it," he repeated, his voice dripping with arrogance. "You don't belong here anymore." Something inside me finally snapped, turning completely still and cold. The fear vanished, replaced by a strange sense of clarity. I reached out and took the letter. For a long moment, I just stared at the text. The words were simple, clean, and devastatingly final. It was as if I were nothing more than a typo he could easily wipe away with a stroke of ink. Behind the loud bass of the music and the superficial laughter of high society, the only thing I could hear was the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Then, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Okay." A few nearby guests murmured, whispering behind their hands. My father smirked, looking incredibly satisfied, as if he had just won a hard-fought battle. He thought he had broken me. Slowly, I reached into my purse. I wasn't looking for a pen to sign his contract of rejection. I was reaching for my phone. "I won't argue with you," I said, keeping my voice entirely calm and steady. "But I really want you to remember this exact moment." He frowned, his satisfaction instantly twisting into irritation. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. Because 6 months ago, I started my new role as a senior financial compliance analyst with a federal task unit. It didn't take long before I noticed something incredibly strange in my father's corporate business records. It started with small inconsistencies, minor accounting errors that most people would overlook. But then they grew larger. Offshore bank transfers, fraudulent vendor accounts, and millions of dollars moving in precise, calculated patterns that made absolutely no sense for a legitimate construction firm. At first, I desperately hoped it was a mistake. I stayed up for nights analyzing the data, praying I was wrong. But the deeper I dug, the worse it got. It was entirely intentional. It was massive corporate money laundering. I knew that if I came forward without airtight proof, I would lose everything, including my hard-earned career. But I wasn't wrong. The federal investigation had been mounting quietly in the shadows ever since, and today was the day the final pieces of evidence would be confirmed in person. My father completely misunderstood my silence as total surrender. He turned away slightly, adjusting his tuxedo jacket, already confident the nuisance had been dealt with. Good. Now pack your things and leave this place. I slipped the unsigned disownment letter into my designer bag. Then, I unlocked my phone and pressed a single button, sending a brief, pre-written text message. At the very back of the grand wedding hall, the heavy side doors swung open. At first, because of the loud music, nobody noticed. But then, the first man stepped inside, wearing a tailored dark suit, a grim expression, and a tactical earpiece. Another followed closely behind him, then another, and then a dozen more. The laughter in the room started to fade away, one conversation at a time, like a song slowly being turned down by a remote control. The atmosphere grew heavy, suffocating. My sister Ava turned toward the entrance, her smile faltering. My father turned too, his eyes narrowing in confusion. And that's when the entire room shifted. The lead agent pulled back his jacket, revealing a gleaming gold badge. Then came the calm, commanding voice that shattered the celebration entirely. Federal agents. Nobody move. The wedding froze completely. The band stopped playing mid-note. My father's face lost every ounce of color, turning a ghostly, sickly white. What is the meaning of this? He snapped, his voice cracking as he tried to maintain his usual authority. You can't just barge in here. This is a private event. The lead agent walked straight down the center aisle, his eyes locked onto my father with absolute certainty. Are you Daniel Carter? He asked. A painful pause stretched across the room. My father swallowed hard. Yes. The agent nodded slightly to the men behind him. We need you to come with us immediately regarding an ongoing federal investigation into financial fraud and racketeering. The words didn't land right away. It took a few agonizing seconds for the gravity of the situation to fully break through the shock in everyone's minds. My father's confidence cracked into a million pieces. That's impossible, he stammered, his hands shaking. Then, his eyes darted wildly around the room until they landed on me. His expression turned venomous. This is her doing. This is your fault. All eyes in the ballroom shifted entirely to me. The guests, my family, the catering staff, everyone was staring. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, and I didn't speak. I simply stood my ground and met his panicked gaze. For the very first time in my entire life, my father didn't look like the all-powerful billionaire in control of the room. He looked small, he looked terrified, he looked like a man who was finally understanding that his actions had consequences. Another federal agent stepped closer to me, speaking gently and respectfully. Thank you for your cooperation, Analyst Carter. We've officially confirmed and secured everything you submitted to the task force. My sister's voice broke into a sob somewhere behind him. Olivia, what did you do? How could you do this to me today? I looked at Ava and then back at my father. I felt no anger, no twisted sense of revenge, just a profound, exhausting sadness. I tried to protect what was left of this family, I said softly, the words echoing in the silent hall. Even when none of you believed I was ever a part of it. My father stood there, paralyzed, still clutching the disownment letter he had tried to force on me just moments earlier. Now, floating in the wreckage of his own empire, that piece of paper felt smaller and more pathetic than ever. And in that heavy, suffocating silence, surrounded by hundreds of wealthy guests who no longer knew where to look, the harsh reality finally settled in. He didn't disown me, he had just completely exposed himself.